Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I will bring you the tea. Welcome to Chronicle Speaks.
Please, I don't have any time for any gossip now. Eh? Yes.
Look at you.
So James Timothy Norman was ready to put on the performance of a lifetime at his last curtain call during his sentencing last week, somehow sending a 3-page misspelled run-on sentence letter to Judge John Ross, attempting to read him for filth. When I tell you this letter came right in the nick of time, literally seconds before Tim's sentencing was called, I thought to myself, Tim must have remembered that old gospel song.
Late in the midnight hour.
God's gonna turn it around. It's gonna work in your favor. And God said, not too fast. The only thing turning around is your hips right back through those doors, ready to serve your life sentence.
The door.
Now, we are going to break down the sentencing, the letter, and much more. But before we do, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any news regarding this case and much more. Now, let's get back into it. So as many of you know, I went out to St. Louis last week for the conclusion of the case concerning Sweetie Pie star Tim Norman taking the precious life of his nephew, Andre Montgomery. It's been almost 7 years to the date that Andre lost his life, and his uncle, James Timothy Norman, was convicted of being the mastermind of the plan. One by one, sentencing has commenced for each of the players involved in this senseless act. Travell Anthony Hill, who was the shooter, was sentenced to 32 years. He did plead guilty and did cooperate with the government. He's currently incarcerated in Mendota, California, and it says that he gets out in 2048. So again, life and these sentences that they give you do not necessarily mean you have to do that whole time. He was locked up last year. He's doing 24 years. Wally Yagnam, who was the insurance agent in this act, did cooperate as well. He's currently in Leavenworth, Kansas, and he gets out in July of 2025. He was sentenced to 36 months. Tara Katanisha Ellis was the one that lured Andre outside. She was arrested for her involvement in the act, and she received 36 months. She also cooperated with the government, and her location has yet to be identified. March 2nd was the day that everyone was waiting on. That was the day of Tim's sentencing, the mastermind of it all. Now, we all gathered in the courtroom, reporters to the left, the Norman family and spectators in the middle, and the Griggs family on the right. Tim came in shackled, not dressed in the suits that he would wear before, but this time his suit was a little different. Tim had on the orange jumpsuit. And again, he was completely shackled. He viewed his family with this defeated look on his face. He gave them a brief hey, slightly lifting his chained hands by his waist. So everyone already knew that count 1 and count 2 of the indictment was life. So the only thing Tim could do now at this juncture was the same thing that Tim did before and during the trial. Deflect, deflect, deflect. Now, the night before the sentencing, Tim's attorney called an emergency motion to continue the sentencing to a later date. Now, I told y'all Tim was trying to work something out late in the midnight hour. So at 9:30 p.m., the night before the sentencing, Tim's attorney met with Tim to prepare for sentencing, and during that meeting, his attorney learned for the first time that Wally Yagnam was allegedly threatened not to testify at Tim's trial on Tim's behalf. Y'all remember, it was a subpoena for Wally to actually show up and testify on Tim's behalf, and they could not find Wally. Wally was MIA. Well, according to this document, Wally called someone at Tim's jail that could get in contact with Tim and convey a message to Tim that law enforcement associated with the case told him that if he testified for Tim, he would get 10 years, and that's why Wally did not show up. So Tim's attorney needed new time to investigate this. They wanted the text messages, emails, instant messages, everything between Detective Rudolph and Wally to be revealed. The judge said that this is very suspicious that it's happening the eve before sentencing. And honestly, it's something that someone heard that came back and told Tim, so it's double hearsay at this point. And lastly, he said Wally could have come in person during the trial to tell his side when he was subpoenaed, and he did not do so. And also, it's been 6 months since Tim's verdict was read, so why did Wally not come forward before this date to tell what he needed to say? So the judge honestly said, you know what? This motion is denied. Tim's attorney filed a motion for acquittal and a new trial, and the judge denied them as well. He said that the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming and the court felt no prejudice was done in trial. The judge asked Tim if he was okay with his attorneys and the way they represented him, and if he was of sound mind. Of course, they asked if he's on any medication, has any issues. Tim agreed that he was of sound mind, and as well, he was okay with the way his attorneys represented him during the trial. So they went over the pre-sentencing report, and they gave 11 objections to the pre-sentencing report. Pretty much, we're not going to go over all of them, but they wanted some points to be reduced. Now, Tim had a felony assault in 1996. In 1997, he had attempted kidnapping, and he had robbery first degree. 1997, I believe there was another robbery in first degree, and they said that those should not count against him because of his age. The judge said that this will not affect the guidelines. Tim's criminal history overly represents the severity of his conduct. The judge also added that it's not going to change the guidelines just for the simple fact that count 1 and count 2 is a mandatory life sentence. So whether we add points, delete points, give you no points, you're still going to get life. So why are we even discussing this? So according to the sentencing guidelines, Tim's total offense level is a level 43. The guideline for count 1 and count 2 is life in prison, and for count 3 is 240 months. Typically, they have a closed conference at this time where the attorneys for Tim as well as the attorneys for the government will all meet. You have that white noise going on, but since Tim did not plead guilty, there is no closed conference. It's whatever they say it is. Now it was time for the victim impact statements, and they started with Aunt Karen, who is the aunt of Andre Montgomery and the sister of Andre's mother, Miss Michelle Griggs. I was writing really fast and I had a hard time reading my writing, but she did say that there were no words of comfort from Tim. No teardrops, no word of comfort, and no look of sadness. Tim didn't even speak at Andre's funeral. However, on December 2nd, 2016, he spoke about it on TV, even took his mother to the site. So basically what Auntie is saying is that Tim did everything for the cameras. When it came to being there for the family, crying at the funeral, looking sad, speaking up for your nephew, there were no words. But when it was lights, camera, action, an OWN TV network was in the building, Tim had everything to say. Tim couldn't hardly talk. He was speaking about this and speaking about that, and even took his mother to the site. How dare you? Now, Andre's brother, Darren Griggs, got up and he said that this was a cold case for 4 years, but his mother called relentlessly. He said that they were okay with Andre moving to St. Louis because he was with family. He said, I guess you're family until you're not. He said $450,000. Your only nephew. Were you jealous? You had a brother killed by violence. You've seen your mother lose a son as well. I've had feelings taking me to a dark place. I've even Googled taking a life. But I have a wife, I have kids, and I have a conscience. And I didn't go along with the plan. He said I had to sit here for days listening to lies of my brother being a thug and a thief, which he was cleared of the robbery at Miss Robbie's home. He said you all hired a private detective to search through my brother's property, and you didn't find anything. Why didn't you use that same detective to search for Andre's killer? Last but not least was Mama Griggs. That's Miss Michelle Griggs, Andre's mother. She gave the definition of greed. She said his greed has hurt so many. His mother is about to be without her son because of his greed. She said Andre was generous. He always helped people. He was the best son, nephew, brother, and uncle. Now she has to live with the fact of not knowing, would Andre have children by now? Would he be married? She missed 7 Christmases, Mother's Days, birthdays. She said that when Andre's life was taken from her, she was given a life sentence. Now she can sleep at night knowing that she is not the only one getting a life sentence. So Tim's attorneys got up and spoke on Tim's behalf and said that Tim had a difficult childhood. He lost his brother and his father to firearms. Tim went to prison and was raised in jail at an early age. Tim did so much for the community, helping repeat offenders get jobs at Sweetie Pies. Tim was this loving, caring individual that will give you his shirt off his back. Tim was everything but a cold-blooded if you seen my last video, everyone pretty much went over Tim's character. They showed the character, the person, because I think Tim has many sides. They showed the good side, but that's not the side that we're here in court about. We're here for his dark side. So the judge asked Tim, do you have anything you wish to say at this moment? Pretty much, do you want to say anything to the family? And Tim said, my counsel has advised me not to speak. The judge kind of gave him this look like, okay, so you ain't got nothing to say. Your life is on the line and you have nothing to say. The judge said, all right, y'all want to hear it, go. He said, Tim, you had money. You were a celebrity. You had everything. You had this good side, but then you had this dark side. He said, and that side was incredibly dark. Child, I wanted to say, preach, preacher. But you had a cold, premeditated plan to execute your nephew. This didn't just start in 2016. You actually had this plan going on in 2014. You even had a point where you text Wally, I don't think he'll be here much longer. He called Tim everything but a child of God. You big booty, Titanic, hip, wide back, teacup head killing monster. Well, after the judge read him his rights, Tim all of a sudden had a letter sent to the judge. When I tell you it's right before sentencing, literally seconds before sentencing, there was a letter. The judge looked down at his computer and he said, Mr. Norman, I received an email from you. We're all looking like, what? How did Tim do that? Let I tell you, the timing was perfect. He said, Mr. Norman, do you have anything you'd like to tell me? Tim said, yes, Your Honor. I said, what? Child, everybody was looking. Even his attorney was like, what the hell? The attorney looked at Tim like, please, man, don't ruin this for me. What are you doing? Tim was like, yes, Your Honor. And so the judge asked Mr. Leonard, Tim's attorney, do you know anything about this? He said, no, Your Honor, I do not. The judge was like, it's no better time than now to get out whatever he needs to say. If he needs to say something, now is the time. Tim's attorney was like, no, Your Honor, we'll talk about it at another time. He was like, I suggest you read what's in this file to find out exactly what it is we need to talk about. It might be something involving this case. So Tim and his attorney got the whispering. Of course, we don't know what they're saying. Tim looked a little aggravated. His attorney was looking like, don't blow this for me. Then all of a sudden, the judge said again, Mr. Norman, do you have anything you need to tell me? Tim said, I'm sorry, Your Honor. No, I do not. The judge was looking like, what in the world is a child? Let me just go ahead and read the sentence. He said, what would you like for me to do, Mr. Leonard? Tim's attorney was like, I just asked that you docket it. It has something to do with another case, not this case. We don't have to go over it right now. I just asked that you docket it. So the letter did not come up until maybe late Saturday, early Sunday morning. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh, Tim was about to set it off. So in this letter, Tim Norman represented himself. Tim definitely had help from a jailhouse lawyer who's good at reading books and case law and knew how to word this, but it had to be typed on one of those old Nokia phones because it was definitely given there's no computers available, and I had to type this underneath the sheets while everyone was asleep. But in this letter, Tim accused Judge Ross of allowing fraud, misrepresentation, conspiracy, and ineffective assistance of counsel by Tim's previous defense attorneys. He said that Judge Ross and Tim's previous attorney, Joseph Hogan, had faced previous pending court decisions for fraud, misrepresentation, and conspiracy. Tim said that the judge and his previous attorney were accused of working with police and prosecution to obtain convictions of defendants. Tim got rid of his attorney because he did not notify Tim of the allegations or the pending decision. Tim was also upset that Attorney Hogan did not notify him that he had worked with and was employed by and received payments from the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Detective David Rudolph. And as you recall, Rudolph was the one that confiscated Tim's phone when they went to arrest him. Tim's phone was supposedly in his pocket at the time of his arrest, and they were able to search it because it was on him. Now, Detective Rudolph employed Tim's attorney at the time, Attorney Hogan, to defend police officers on 2 separate occasions. The same time Tim's case was ongoing. Tim kept bringing up the fact that the discovery wasn't submitted by the government, and he didn't feel like Attorney Hogan was really pushing that issue. Tim decided to fire his legal team, and during the hearing, Judge Ross tried to talk Tim into keeping his attorneys, but Tim declined. Tim stated that after he declined, Judge Ross rushed the trial to happen within 2 months, knowing that there were discovery issues. Tim said that Judge Ross had questionable decisions that were in favor of Detective Rudolph, and in certain instances, defendants were later set free due to Detective Rudolph's illegal arrest, search seizures, and coercion of witnesses. Now, other courts said Rudolph was wrong when Judge Ross said that he was right. And he said that Judge Ross and prosecution deliberately did not admit and excluded evidence that would have revealed this case had drug undertone. Now, according to Tim, this crime happened at a drug house. And again, Tim gets to pointing the finger at Andre again by saying that the victim and others who were shot and people present had drugs and weapons at the time of the incident. Tim stated that in previous cases, Judge Ross had to recuse himself from drug cases due to possible family history and bias, and he stated that Judge Ross and prosecution deliberately did not admit testimony and evidence that would have shown that this case had drug undertone because he would have had to recuse himself. And Tim, once again victim shaming, said Andre had a history of drug issues which led to his fallout with the family and the removal from his mom's house, Miss Robbie's house, Tim's apartment, loss of his TV job, removal from school, and the robbery of Miss Robbie's home. Now, the fact that Tim is still trying to blame Andre after Andre was cleared of that is his narcissistic behavior, is sick behavior, because he knows exactly who set the Miss Robbie's home. And again, there were only 2 people other than Miss Robbie who had access to her security code. That was Tim and that was Andre, and it seems like a lot of times Tim has a problem with looking at the man in the mirror. He blames everyone but himself. Now, Tim goes on to say that during Terica's arrest, there was an arrangement made by the United States Eastern District of Missouri to obtain an attorney to travel from Missouri to Memphis to represent Terica. Now, it's been said that Terica believed that her life was at risk or in danger if she did not testify against Tim. Now, Travell, on the other hand, was wanted for questioning after Terica gave her statement. Now, in November of 2020, Travell and his daughter were at a grocery store. Travell was apprehended. His 5-year-old daughter had to come with him to the police station. They searched his car. He had drugs and guns in it. Now, Tim states that during the interview with Travell, he was coerced into giving false statements and a confession about Tim, and they used Travell's daughter as bait. Now, because Travell had priors and he was a felon, Tim believed that Travell was coerced into signing a false confession and giving a videotape confession with the information that he was told to give. In exchange, they would let his daughter go, as if they was gonna make his daughter do time at 5 years old, and give him a manslaughter charge with a self-defense narrative. Now, again, Chronicles has given you the cliff notes. I wasn't gonna read all of that out to you because honestly it was very hard to read with the run-on sentences, but in essence, Tim is painting this narrative that the government is after him. They want to pin this heinous crime on him, and this case needs to either be retried or Tim needs to be let out because he wasn't treated fairly. What about Andre, Tim? Tim and this "I didn't do it" attitude, everyone is against me behavior needs to stop, and he needs to take responsibility for his actions. The fact that he's still pointing the finger at Andre, the fact that he still doesn't think he did anything. Not once did he speak about the text message that he sent to Wally saying he might not last 6 months. Not once did he talk about him and Terica going around to all of these different places getting these burner phones. Not once did he speak about coming to St. Louis for a very brief time only to leave right after the murder. Like, Tim, are you serious? What are you doing? So I wanted to update you guys on that letter, but let's go back to what happened in court. Now, you already know Tim Norman was found guilty on all 3 charges. Now, the first charge was conspiracy to commit murder for hire and murder for hire resulting in death. Now, for those 2 charges, Tim got life. The last charge was mail fraud. Tim got 240 months for that. All of them are to be served concurrently. So he got 2 life sentences, one for the first count and then one for the second count, and then 240 months for the third count. But again, they're all served at the same time. Do know they were speaking of another case that Tim currently has pending in Texas. I'm not sure what that case is about, but I do want to say this. I did tell you before, I believe when I was on live, that life in Missouri is 36 years. It's actually 30, so I stand corrected. I'm sorry about that. It is 30 years. Now, in Missouri, if you receive life and you have one prior, you can serve 40% of that sentence or until you reach the age of 70 with 30% served. With two priors, you can serve 50% of that sentence or until you reach the age of 70 with 40% served. And with three or more priors, you can serve 80% of that sentence or until you reach the age of 70 with 40% served. So it looks like Tim might get out at the age of 69, maybe 70. We will find out more facts regarding his sentencing and exactly how long Tim will be in once he's sent to the facility that he will spend that time at. You can always look at the BOP.gov website, and it will give his schedule for release date, just like it did for Travell when I showed you earlier in the video. Okay, y'all, that was a lot. I tried to give you everything in 20 minutes. We were there for a lot longer, but again, I tried to give you everything in 20 minutes. I do want to thank the Griggs family and especially Mama Michelle for giving me this beautiful medallion. Again, I will cherish this forever. I also got my Andre shirt. I will wear this. I am very thankful for the family. They have gone through enough. I'm going to continue to pray for them. This has been a long, long journey, and I know they're glad that it is finally over and we get to put that big booty monster right in jail. I need to hear from you. What do you think about everything going on with this Tim Norman trial? I'm going to put the link to my live in the description so you can watch that as well, seeing exactly what happened after the trial. Y'all leave a comment. Tell me what you think about everything going with this case, and you know how we do. We will talk about it down below. Talk to you guys later. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my new episodes.